Let's give Nabeel Rajab, you raised many points there. Let's just try and keep this a discussion. And Nabeel Rajab, if you could just respond to that first point that was raised. Mansour al-Arri says this is not an uprising. What's your response to that?
Well, when you see more than half of the population in the street calling to change the government, calling for elected government, and part of it calling for the removal of the whole regime, when you see more than half than your population outside in the street, which is much more than the revolution of Egypt, which is much more than the revolution of Tunisia, which is much more even than the revolution in Iran, in terms of percentage of people came out in the street. Tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, according to all international news agencies, hundreds of thousands were outside in the street calling for a reform or calling for removal of the whole regime. What you call that? What is uprising according to you? Now you suppress people, putting people in jail, torturing them, killing them, suppressing them, silencing them. It does not mean it's not an uprising because you have the ability with your tank, with your machine guns, with your airplane to put them back at home. That does not mean it was not an uprising. This is just you are trying to hide the fact. The fact people don't want you anymore. People don't want this government anymore. People are fed up from a government who's been ruling for 42 years. And this is the fact you have to admit and you have to face, and better than elaborating in whether it's a monarch or what is an uprising or it's a revolution. It is an uprising. People came out in the street, want to change, want to see a change. But what you have done, you killed people. You killed a lot of people, much more in terms of percentage than people died in Tunisia, more than the people died in Syria and Egypt in terms of percentage. Today you have political prisoners. 2 political prisoners for every 1,000 citizens. You will not find anywhere in this world today that 2 political prisoners out of 1,000 citizens. You will not find hundreds of thousands of people being terminated from their work, being fired from their work in a school and university. People are being put in jail. People are tortured. People are targeted in their mosques. People are targeted in their living. What do you call this?
Okay, Stacey Hager, regardless of what name, what label we put on events in Bahrain, the protests, would you suggest that the majority of people there are indeed hungry for change?
I think so, and I think it's important to note that when you talk about things like empowering the parliament, about giving people more rights, those are pieces that everybody agreed on, I think, across the ideological spectrum from the very beginning. The challenge has become, because the initial crack, this started, I would argue, as a reform movement that has turned into something more. But in the middle, in the moderate middle on both sides, you still have people calling for a constitutional monarchy. That's what the political societies continue to call for. So the question is, I think, how do you get out of this? Because the situation between all sides, the moderates are excluded from a process, and nobody is talking to each other in Bahrain right now because there is such a lack of trust among everyone. And that initiated, I think, with the first crackdown in February and continues on to the events since March 15th, 16th.
Mr. Al-Arri, the GCC, everybody knows, sent Saudi troops into Bahrain. It seems that talking would be perhaps a better way to find a peaceful outcome to this situation. Do you suggest that the GCC is going to implement these talks?
Well, thank you. Some points that your guest, the lady, pointed out, I would like to elaborate on. One, as you are aware, the state of national state of emergency was declared around 15th of March, and it will be lifted by on the 1st of June, basically 2 months and a half, the whole national state of emergency. The next step, which is very important for Bahrain, is basically to start a real dialogue. That is, I think, is where we need to go, and there where we need the help and the assistance of the West, the GCC, to facilitate such a dialogue, a real dialogue. And that dialogue takes in consideration, you see, it has to have some basis for it. One, that Bahrain is a reform process. Bahrain is part of the GCC fabric. We also recognize the opposition. And also the opposition needs to understand that it is not only that the Shiites are one part of the whole Bahraini fabric. There are the Sunnites. There are other elements that also need to be part of that dialogue. I think this is what needs to be done as a next logical step, and sooner rather than later.
Okay, Nabeel Rajab. Another point that Mansour Al-Arid raised there was that the state of emergency will be lifted on June the 1st. Do you expect the situation there, Nabeel, to get any better after that?
Well, first of all, he was talking about dialogue. I think dialogue is a good step if it started, but then whom you're going to have a dialogue with? If all the opposition, leader of opposition are in jail today behind bars, and how come you start a dialogue? And now the government have been involved in a bloody crackdown where gap is getting wider and wider between the ruling elite and the people. You have to face this situation, which is much complicated than 2 months ago. The gap is bigger and wider than 3 months ago, but still, I think we as human rights defenders here, we will push for any kind of dialogue to start. Regarding your question, I don't think this is the martial law lifting anything to do with an internal politics, rather than it is for an economical interest. As you know, they are looking desperately to have the Formula One before the end of the year. And as Formula One is an indicator that Bahrain life has come back to normal. And Bahrain is desperately trying to tell the international community, the international economic community, that Bahrain is back to normal. And they know that Formula One start here means okay. So that's why they have lifted the martial law a few days before the decision that should be taken by the people of the Formula One. I think it's morely to do with economical issue more than with inside politics. And I don't think anything will change. And we're going to see after 1 month, I don't think much things will change with the removal of the martial law.
Okay, well, let's look a little bit more about the international community. The US administration has been noticeable in its absence regarding the situation in Bahrain. We've had the Secretary of State Hillary Clinton urging a return to a process that would result in real, meaningful changes for the people there. And she said, quote, "We've been very clear from the beginning that we do not want to see any violence. We deplore it. We think it's absolutely unacceptable." Now, one opposition MP actually questioned Clinton during this seminar, which was aired on Bahraini TV. It was over the US's alliance with Bahrain. Ibrahim Mattar then spoke to us at Al Jazeera.
I think we would like to have a stronger relation with the United States. We would like to see our relation with the United States as opportunity for the progress of democracy here in Bahrain. We don't like to see the relation with the United States as obstacle. We don't want to see the Fifth Fleet here in Bahrain as obstacle. We would like to see the impact of our relation